So, what are all these myths we hear about traditional publishing? You're going to get this deal, but they're going to change everything that you write, or they're not going to do any marketing for you. All these things that we hear, whether we're trying to go the self-publishing or the traditional publishing route, at one point we all kind of looked at the traditional publishing route and we heard maybe some good or bad things about it. Well, today I'm talking with two authors who just went through the traditional publishing process to find out what's real and what's a myth. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm MK Williams. I'm an author and independent publisher. I love sharing my insights about all things self-publishing with you. Before I get into the details of today's interview, don't forget to hit subscribe. You can be here every week as I release new videos about publishing, making a career being an author, and now being a mompreneur. And today I have an amazing interview with Julien and Kiersten Saunders of Rich and Regular. Their book, Cashing Out, Win the Wealth Game by Walking Away, just came out this summer. Through Penguin Random House, and we went through such a great conversation of how did they get the deal, what was the marketing like, all the things that we think we know about the publishing process. They kind of broke it down. We have a really great interview. It's a little long, so I'm just going to dive right in right now so you can start learning some of the amazing pieces of wisdom that they are going to be throwing out. Okay, well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I am super excited because Julien and Kiersten Saunders, who are the co-creators behind Rich and Regular, are here. And I'm just going to take a minute just to talk about how amazing they are. And hopefully they're okay with me shouting their accolades. But so that way you watchers know that they are the real deal. They know their stuff. And I'm super excited to talk to them all bookish things. So the pair started with an award-winning blog in 2017. They've since grown their content platform to include the eponymous podcast, their hit YouTube series, Money on the Table, and they're the money editors with Success Magazine. They're also the co-authors of Cashing Out, Win the Wealth Game by Walking Away, and they've also co-authored Eat Better on a Budget. Aside from all their business accolades, they're really just fantastic people. And my husband and I were so lucky to get to meet them back in 2019. And they're certainly some of the hardest working people I know. And even before we started recording, we said it's because we have things to say. Like we have to be the ones to do it and get that out there. So I'm really excited for you all to hear their story today, to talk specifically today about some of the myths about traditional publishing. How much is on the author, how much on the publisher, who put together, this genius marketing for their book, which I was so envious of as they were doing it, because I was like, this is the perfect launch. They did it perfectly. Like how did they make it happen? So I'm super excited to get started. So without any further delay, Rich and Regular, Julien and Kiersten, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Hey. It's so good to be here and to talk about the book, like not the topics, but like the physical product of the book. We haven't done a conversation like this, so I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, she took the words out of my mouth.
Yay, awesome. Yeah, I could talk shop about book stuff all day. It's kind of a little dangerous.
We probably could too. Like we're gonna learn whether we can or not today. Like, man, like I could have kept going.
I'm excited too. And I think hopefully for fans of your content, this will give them something new to watch too, because you have been doing so much great media about the book. And we'll get to that later on as we kind of walk through the process. So I'll just kind of dive in first and just kind of say like, who is Rich and Regular? Like, what are you about? What's your platform? What's your message? And kind of, I'm sure that's going to flow into the books that you've created.
Yeah, so I think the initial idea to launch the blog and call it Rich and Regular was because it was just kind of funny to us. It was like the only thing better than being rich and famous is being rich and regular. But we also wanted to make a point to not talk about money in a way that we knew people were already talking about money. And the reason for that was because when we found the personal finance, in particular, the FIRE space online, and looked at it from a content perspective, we were like sharing it with people. Like we loved like everything that we saw and read and listened to, and we'd share with people, and then they just did not love it nearly as much as we did. And we realized very quickly it's because people did not envision themselves in it, right? So a lot of our obviously friends and family are Black people and people of color. So they couldn't really relate to a lot of the content because so much of the content was centered in characters and lifestyles and in places that were just unfamiliar to them. And so we didn't want them to miss the message. And so very similar to what we were talking about before we hit record, who but us to create a platform that solves that problem, right? Because we get it, we love it, and felt like we were living it every single day. And we really felt like it was something that could help move our community forward. And so we pretty much sort of added our own spin to it and basically talk about money write about money or create content about money. But we're very mindful of the way that we do it. This is not your typical, hey guys, my name is Julien. Like, we don't do that because we know that only works for some people. There's not a lot of that kind of thing. There's not a lot of the, here's my budget. It's really like, let's introduce this soft introduction of this concept and these ideas, and really talk about the things that are important to the people that we're trying to attract, and showing them how money relates to it, right? So like getting them interested in, by talking about the things that they're already interested in. And so that's really been what sort of launched the blog. And we've kind of been doing iterations of that over the last couple of years through different forms of media.
Nice. I love that. I love hearing that, because I try to bring that to when people say, oh, well, somebody wrote a similar book or somebody has something similar. I'm like, but nobody's going to explain it the way that you individual explain it. Right. So some of the facts, like some of the math behind 5, right? It's numbers, like
it's the same.
Math is the same, but the way that, exactly. The way you explain it is different from the way that Pete, Mr. Money Mustache, explains it, for sure. It's different from the way that so many other creators are explaining. And I think that's perfect because, like you said, everybody's coming with their different experiences, and the way you say it totally clicks with your audience.
It's everything. It's the joke that you make. It is the music that you play in an Instagram story. It is all of those things, right? We always think about culture as the adhesive that actually makes a message stick, right? And so what we do is we explore the culture and find the thing that they're paying attention to, and then sort of redirect them to the message. The message, the math is always going to be the same. Yeah. The final takeaway, the what can we do's are pretty much always going to be the same.
Spend less than you make.
But I have to plug it into the thing that you're already paying attention to. And so that's sort of our job, is to pay attention to the broader space, really the world outside of money, and then redirect people back into it by sort of, being creative, funny, sexy, delicious, any of those sort of things that draw people in. We're willing to do it, short of having like a sex tape.
I mean,
OnlyFans is a great platform.
So, it's a great sidekick.
Your first post.
Great sidekick.
I mean, that's one way to get to FI.
It is.
Nobody's discussing that one. Okay, perfect. Well, going back to what you said right before that, with, appealing to different songs and tastes, and is something delicious. I definitely want to go into how the two of you have brought food into literally into the conversation. So you have your YouTube series, Money on the Table. And before that, the precursor was Eat Better on a Budget, which was your beautiful, I mean, the book looks amazing, like the colors and the images that you have in there are amazing, to show people how to eat better on a budget. And this was an ebook you guys put out in 2019, self-published on your website, so direct sales only. So tell me a little bit about this process and kind of why, after this book being self-published, you decided to go the traditional route for cashing out.
Yeah, so they're both books, but that's about the only thing that they have in common. Eat Better on a Budget was really an idea and a bit of a personal challenge for me. And so I used to be a professional chef in a former life. And so again, when I think about personal finance, which, years ago was a hobby and it has now become sort of a core part of my life, it's very easy for me to draw these connections. But then also, even when I just reflected on our relationship and thought about when we first met, some of the challenges that she would have with cooking and being in the kitchen were just completely unfamiliar with me. Like I didn't realize that people had these challenges. And so I said, wouldn't it be great, like, if you just sort of had like a chef in your back pocket? And so that's what we did, right? It's pretty much, sort of taking those two worlds, personal finance and cooking, sort of demystifying cooking better, breaking it down to like, these are just the 5 things that you need. You don't need the big set. These are the 3 things that you need.
Master these
skills
and techniques.
Right. Like ignore all the other, like don't be inspired by TikTok, because that's like, it's not nearly as simple as you think it's going to be.
Well, this was pre-TikTok. This was just like,
right. I don't know,
inspired by the Food Network, honestly. Like I was one of those people that was an aspirational chef. I would buy all of these ingredients after watching Giada or Ina, and didn't realize that what they were using was technique, for one.
Correct.
And then really premium ingredients. So my version of a cacio de pepe did not taste the same as, or even look the same as, what I was seeing on TV.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest dilemma. This is a great example of meeting people where they are with your book or your product. I assumed that I had to go out because I liked to eat better than what I knew how to make. Yeah. Like I wanted better food. And the process of going out is what took me out of my budget. So eat better on a budget would have spoken squarely to me, someone like me who felt like they were constrained by their budget to eat at home and had a preference for good food. And so like, how do you solve for those two things?
Yeah. So it was a passion project, but it was also us trying to solve for the observation that there were likely a lot of people out there like her. And so it was like, all right, well, here's how to do it. Here's a simple way to think about it. And hopefully it can help you find a better balance between eating better while also staying on a budget. But going the sort of independent route was really just what made sense. Because I think at the time I was still very much just kind of thinking about ways to monetize the brand in a way that felt comfortable for me. And I was like, all right, I know I'm adding value here, so I'm fine with like sort of exchanging money and that sort of thing. But I was also just curious about the process. And, I remember reaching out to you a couple of times and you were super helpful, just helping me think about what that process was like. And I really enjoyed it. And I still believe in that. And so it was pretty much like scratching an itch, meeting a need, but I think also a bit of a personal and business challenge. But the traditional book process was scratching a completely different itch and obviously a much more of a bear to sort of get through.
Yes. Two totally different beasts. And so, okay. So I kind of want to go back to something you said, Kiersten, about, I love that you said that, this was a book that you felt like you needed, right? So if you maybe had these skills, you wouldn't have felt the need to go out, you would have been able to cook better. And I think that's the perfect reason to write a book. It's like, This is the book I felt that I needed. And yes, maybe that's an audience of one, but there's probably going to be other people who feel the same way. And I think there's a lot of authors out there who feel like, well, I need to write what the market wants. I need to write what's hot and new right now. And you can't ignore that, but it is a commitment to write a book. So if you're looking to make a market happy, go make TikTok video trends. Like that's probably going to be much faster return versus writing a book. So I'm really glad that you said that this was a book that you felt that you needed, and things like that. And I love, Julien, what you mentioned about like it scratched an itch, like it was like a learning challenge as well as providing the value. And I kind of come to that with my books. And I kind of did that with my Author Your Ambition series of books. I was like, people are asking questions. I have the videos. How else can people learn? I'm like, as a means to constantly be like, here's the answers in every way that you need them. And then I can just focus on my thing. And so it's a constant learning challenge. It's all those things. So for me, I'm always looking for it to check multiple boxes before I make that business decision. Like, will I be interested? Will I learn something? Will it help people? And so I love that you said that. I feel like, I love that. But talking about the 10,000-pound gorilla elephant beast hybrid that is traditional publishing. So what was the discussion? What was the decision process of, all right, we're going to write a book and we're going to do the traditional thing? Like how did that discussion come about? How did that idea come about? Tell me the genesis story.
So I have always wanted to write a book. I think my earliest memory of creative writing was probably when I was a teenager. I know Kiersten had very similar ambitions. One of the reasons or things that attracted me to her is that I realized that she had an appreciation for writing. I think like a lot of things, I sort of lost contact with that part of myself in my 20s and then rediscovered it sort of later in my 20s and sort of let it go again in my 30s. But it was something that I just always really wanted to do. And, once we started with the blog, it really started to get those wheels turning again, but it felt different at that time because like at every other point in my life, I also recognized my own cycles, which is that you start, you stop, you start, you stop, which I think is typical for a lot of bloggers, but something felt different during that time because I think it was because of what I was talking about, which was the Black experience and talking about money. And it felt like it was such a void. And based on the response that I was getting, I was like, all right, this might be something bigger than just a blog. And that was something that we were always mindful of. It was like, we're not just launching a blog. We were mindful as marketers to be creating a brand, dare I say a lifestyle or a way of thinking, something that was far more sort of multi-pronged than just a blog. And so, yeah, like we knew it was happening as we started looking at other creators in the space. We also saw that kind of the best sort of went this natural route if they've got a blog and or a podcast, and then at some point they kind of take it to the next level with the book. And so as we started thinking about what might happen with our blog and our platform, we realized that that was a possibility. And we were really, really lucky. I'll never forget the day that it happened. Like, I wish I could say, hey, we had this idea and we jotted it down and we were like pitching, but that actually wasn't the case. It was a bit of a dream come true. We got an email from someone with the subject line, "Hello from Penguin Random House." And they asked us if you're interested in writing a book. They'd read the blog, they'd read a quote in an interview from Kiersten and just sort of loved the word choice. And they said, "Hey, I wonder if they'd be interested in writing a book." And we were like, hell yeah. Right. Like not right now though, like it was something that
we didn't know what we were saying.
No, we had no
at
idea.
The time. We didn't know, like we now know, but like we were just like, yeah, it'll be done by next July. Like, we'll sign that thing today. Yeah. And it was like, we did not anticipate spending 4 months on the proposal alone.
Yeah.
And then going through the process of talking to different publishers and then actually starting the manuscript.
Yeah.
We assumed that like writing a book was very similar to writing a blog. So we went in pretty green, like, absolutely, we'll do it.
Yeah. 16 versions later. Then it's like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah.
Only 16?
Yeah, only 16. But but I so appreciate that grind. I really, really do. But yeah, I'm super fortunate. And I can only imagine, like, if you've been dreaming about getting a book deal, you're probably cringing and rolling your eyes at us. But that's okay, right? Like, I get it. But I'm just being honest, right? Like, we were, I would say we were lucky in some ways. But I also knew that this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen when it happened, but we were very mindful to be telling the types of stories that we felt like no one was talking. It was like, why is no one talking about this? And a very similar feeling was like, well, who but us, right? So let's talk about it the way that we want to talk about it and do our best to sort of create this lighthouse that brings people to us. And it worked, right? It led to that press opportunity. That press opportunity caught the attention of an acquiring editor. And that's ultimately what led to the beginnings of us writing a book and going the traditional route.
Wow, I have so much to unpack from all of that. That's amazing. And yes, for anybody watching who's thinking like, it never happens that way. It does happen that way. But I would probably speculate, I don't have numbers in front of me, that this is probably like less than 1% of all book deals come from this route. Most people are doing the grind of the querying and the proposal writing for the nonfiction side, but it is truly amazing. And I think it speaks to that intentionality that you mentioned with like, we weren't just building a blog, we were building a brand. And that I could tell from the beginning, like, I mean, your brand colors were always on point. Like the way you were showing up was always on point. As somebody who was working in marketing, I was like, they're great at this. Like and you had the good message behind it, right? I think there's some people where you can tell they're kind of flexing on all their marketing, but like, not saying anything, or like people have a great message. You're like, if you're just a bit better at marketing. And I think you guys finally combined it with like amazing, powerful message and just the most on point marketing I've ever seen. Like I've told so many authors, I'm like, just go look at what your regular are doing, like learn by example from them. So I think that is amazing. And I know you said like it was luck, but I think you made your own luck, right? Like you put in the work. I
certainly tilted the odds in my favor.
And oh, by the way, like walked away, right? It was a big bet. Like we walked away from, at least at the time, I walked away from my job. Again, and I think that was an act of confidence. I was like, you know what? I believe I am the person I am describing on LinkedIn. And so I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to apply all of the skill set that I was giving to a corporation at a deep discount to myself and to my business and to my brand. And I want to see what happens. And that's exactly what happened. So again, we had every incentive to write the way that many of our peers were writing at the time. And we probably could have made a crap ton of money doing that, but I didn't want to serve the algorithm. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to write what I wanted to write. I wanted to tell funny stories, uncomfortable stories. I wanted to use foul language. I wanted to do all of these things so that I was doing my part, sort of honoring that initial observation, which was to attract people to a space that they didn't necessarily find value in. And so it required me to sort of think, talk, and act like like myself, but like to cater to them, which meant that we needed to do things very differently. And so it was a huge sort of, I'm just trying to get the other side of it here. It was like, it's a lot of uphill sort of, building or jogging, if you will, before we sort of hit our stride and we're able to now kind of think or pour that energy into a more formal project.
Yeah, your 10,000 hours to become an overnight success. Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, okay, so you get this email from PRH and you're like, this is amazing. What did you do to vet that it was authentic, that it wasn't like, this is too good to be true? Like, how did you go about vetting that like this was legit and authentic? Because there are current issues in the publishing space where people are like scamming from agencies, scamming from publishing houses. So what did you do when you got that? Like, obviously excited, but okay, is this too good to be true? Like, what was that thought process?
It was, I don't think we knew to think it was a scam. We responded and asked for a call. Okay. And I think we got on the phone with her a day or two later and just started talking. And it just so happened that we would be in New York within the next like month or 6 weeks or whatever it was. And so she agreed to meet with us in person. Like, she wasn't rushing us or anything. She was like, listen, I'm just, it's what I do. I buy books. So like, take your time, think about it, maybe decide if you want an agent or not. But, if you're ever in New York, we can talk in person. And so we went to the offices and just kind of met her. She walked us around, talked for a little bit. And after that, we knew like we should probably be looking for an agent. Like, I think we can do this. And that's kind of what started the ball rolling.
Yeah. Okay. We did some research. I mean, there was certainly some Googling. I was like, who is she?
He probably did that. I'm
sure.
like an optimist.
I'm a natural skeptic.
A little naive.
So yeah, between Google and LinkedIn, those were pretty confirming for me to see that she was real. Okay. But also the note itself, like it did not give me very scammy vibes. Like I do know of some of the situations that you're talking about, and though some of them are good, some of them are also kind of like, I don't know. That sounds a little fishy.
Yeah.
Okay. It was written in a way that sounded like someone who really did just read my entire blog.
Yeah, it was not copy and pasted. It was very personal note.
Yeah, so I was like, if she is scamming, she sort of deserves whatever she gets because she did a damn good job of sort of luring me in. It was like it would be the perfect catfish. I was like, you know what, I got to give it to you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's good. So, okay. So you did the research. Kiersten was like, this is amazing. Okay. Perfect. That's why it's good. You two are a team.
Yeah.
Got the balance there. Awesome. Okay. So, and obviously going to the PRH offices, it was pretty obvious, like legit. They didn't build like a whole fake thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh, it's weird. They're in the warehouse by the dogs. I know very much. That's amazing. So, okay. So you decided at that point you wanted an agent. I'm sure that was probably the easiest query ever. Like we
did not decide that that's when we wanted.
No. Okay.
We weren't sure. So at the time, right, this is where the entrepreneur in us was, my thing was, if we don't have an agent, we're going to get shortchanged on this deal. And then I was also thinking, man, in my mind, right, I don't know if this is valid, but I was like, I really wish we had more sales with Eat Better on a Budget, because I feel like we might be able to sort of use that as leverage and say, well, why should I go this route? Because I'm getting all of this on my own. Didn't have that either, right? And so at that point, we reached out to someone who, it's Lynette Calfani-Cox, who we didn't even really know at the time. We were sort of in an adjacent space, but we reached out to her. She's a published author. And we asked for her opinion and sort of leaned on her as a mentor. And she sort of gave us her perspective on what we should do. And we decided to trust her recommendation, which was to get an agent. At the end of the day, we were grossly unfamiliar with this process. And so, rather than sort of commit to doing it ourselves and learning all that stuff, again, I really just wanted to focus on writing. I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, if we're going to commit what might be 2 to 3 years in our life to this project, I really want to just focus on that. I don't want to also have to be managing sort of the business side of it. And so for us, it really was not like, this was not a matter even of like making the most money as possible. It was like, all right, I want this to be as much of an enjoyable and learning experience as possible. And that seemed like the best decision for us.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a really good way to approach it too, because there is, I think especially having gone through the self-publishing process, you're like, oh, there's so much I didn't know. But then thinking about the traditional process, which like I've only been like on the periphery of some of that, like helping with Choose 5 publishing, it's like there's so much you don't even know that you don't know as you're going through it that you're like, what? Okay. So that's really great that you got that advice. And I think that's one thing I appreciate so much about the great authors, like just in the world, in the community, is that most authors want to help other authors. Because we're all kind of like in the trenches together, right? Like we're all trying to write, we're trying to work on this, but there is so much more to it. And I've found so much joy in like connecting with other authors because everybody has like a little tip, right? Everybody's had a different experience and a little bit of advice that can just help. We're like, maybe that wouldn't be my experience, but you know what? Maybe it would have been like, get that little bit of advice, get that little bit of advice. And I actually compare it almost to like getting ready to go into labor. Like I try to talk to like so many moms to be like, what's your one tip? What's the one thing that I need to know? And like half of it didn't even apply, but I'm like, just in case I need to know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you're like you're birthing a book. Like what are all the things that could go wrong? What are all the things that you need to know up until like that moment? And so I do find that author community great. So that's awesome that you had Lynette to lean on. And I'm sure other authors in the FI community throughout the process to kind of ask, like, is this normal? Is this right? Like all of that. So I think that's a beautiful part of the journey that
awesome. Our agent recommendation was from a fellow colleague in the space, right? So like, again, we consistently leaned on people who'd been there before to sort of learn and become a bit more familiar with the process.
Nice. Okay. So, you know, talking with Lynette, okay, now thinking we want somebody to handle the business side. So now you're like, okay, we need an agent. So was that first step just talking to the other authors in the space? Who's your agent? Can you get us a contact? Or did you do a lot of other research, like just going like cold searching on Google? What was the process there?
I don't think we did any cold searching. We really leaned on our network. We asked fellow authors in the space, and then Julien knew a couple of people outside of the finance space, but were writers or in the literary space that he recommended. And we sent notes to, I don't know, maybe
it was like five
people.
Had a couple of calls.
A lot of people were like, sounds cool, but like not my, like I wouldn't be a good fit, or I don't have the time. Couple of non-responses, but ultimately we ended up having calls with a few people, and we landed on our agent Lucinda after one phone conversation, and then we happened to be back in New York for another business trip, and we met with her. And in that conversation, she really understood our vision for what we wanted to, what we wanted the book to be, and who we wanted to become as authors. Like that was a big piece for us, where it's like, it's not just about the book for us. It's like, I'm using this as a stepping stone, as an infinity ring in my set. Like, I want this to be something meaningful for my life, because it's a huge sacrifice. You know, you spend 3 or 4 years on something. I'm 37. That's almost 10% of my life. Like I wanted it to be a meaningful time. So she understood that. She was able to repeat back what we were saying. She could name books that had similar effects and name authors that she thought of when we would say certain things. And so it was almost like we were truly interviewing her. Like a lot of times people go into these meetings and they're trying to be picked, they're trying to be chosen, but it was kind of like we wanted a partner.
Yeah, it was like, listen, we've got an interested sort of publisher, right? It's reputable. Can you help us navigate this deal? But, you know, I need to know that you understand what we're trying to do, what we're trying to build. And it was a great conversation. And I think we told ourselves that we'd sort of think on it, by the time we got home. But honestly, I think by the time we got to the airport leaving New York, we just sent her a note and said, let's do this, because we felt good about it. And she was really helpful. She was also really helpful at, she was also really honest with us, letting us know like where there were just sort of gaps in what we were trying to do or in our skill set, and pointed us towards coaches and other people that she'd worked with in the past that could sort of help fill that gap to ensure that we get the best deal that possible. So she was really helpful. And again, if we'd had to learn all of those things and also manage those negotiations on our own, I don't know that we would have had such a favorable experience.
That's very good to know. And I think you touch on a lot of things there about the agent, like finding an agent process, right? So here the two of you are, this up and coming brand that has now swelled to just enormous empire sizes. You have one of the biggest publishers on the planet saying, hey, you want to write a book? And, you know, you're reaching out to agents and some just aren't getting back, or they're saying it's not a good fit. And I think that goes to show the difficulty to get an agent, right? And that it is really about fit, and that the agents who said, that's great, like, it's just not for me and what I'm good at selling, what I'm good at producing. And it's, you know, you might think, you know, somebody's incentive is, oh, well, if I sell this and I make money, like easy peasy, but they're like, no, that's not going to be a good fit. And you want to find people, you want to know that there are people saying, no, thank you. Like somebody else is going to be a better fit for you. And that you found that that one perfect fit. And I think hopefully that's something for aspiring authors to take away, that like, don't just settle for the first person who says yes, but you think it's not a good fit. Like, trust your gut, have those conversations, because it really is a business partner who's going to look out for not just this book, but like the career, the longevity of like all the different things with this one piece of IP, this book. So that's amazing that you guys did find her, and that you found each other.
Yeah. And they're also an insider. Like, when you think about all of the decision points in the publishing process, 90% of the decisions are made in rooms that you're not in as the author, right? So you want somebody, ideally an agent, who has kind of close personal relationships with people at publishers, or at least trusted relationships, so that when you get an answer or a result, an outcome that maybe is not ideal for you, you can send them back to be like, what's the real reason? Like, what was the concern? Did they say why so-and-so said no? Did they say why they want to delay it? Did they say why they want to change the cover? Like, you want somebody who can go in and kind of ask those questions on your behalf. It's not to say that you shouldn't advocate for yourself as well, but it's nice to have someone who's like, can you just text the person at Penguin or whatever publisher you're at to figure out, like, to just give you that extra sense of information and insight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. And that's great that you had that partner and that champion in your corner. Because I think that's only why the book's been so, obviously your words, your brand, like who you are, that's like so much of it. But I think having, that partner and champion, that's huge. Okay. So you're flying out of New York, you have an agent, you have a potential publisher. So you're good. Like
that's what we thought.
Right. Yeah. So what was the next step then? Because I know you guys did work with a book coach. Like, is that the point where you brought her in?
We actually had two. So we had a coach for the proposal process. Right. So after we signed with our agent, we went back home to write the proposal. And we were really trying to get it done before the end of the year. This was probably September of 2019. Mm-hmm. And we were really trying to get it done before the end of the year to get that last little round of deals. And that didn't work out. Like, we couldn't finish it in time. So it actually went out to publishers around February 2020. And so we went back to New York to have the meetings. And then we signed the deal with Penguin and Portfolio. And then we got home. And while we were in New York, we had been hearing rumblings been hearing rumblings about this pandemic. There's 22 cases in New York, but like our flight home was empty, like from New York. And we were kind of like, that's weird. Like, what is this? Is this just a fluke? So we get back home, we're ready to start writing, but the world just shuts down. Our son's daycare shuts down. Like, it's really hard to get financial transactions done. I quit my job, and like there was just a lot going on. So we didn't actually start writing for several months. I mean, we tried. We tried to write, but the drafts that were coming out were not great.
They were reflective of the times that we were in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because on top of all of those things, like we were also going through this like racial reckoning, and it felt like a period of mourning for us, right? Because like we're sitting here writing a book about money and wealth from a Black perspective, factoring in all of these things while a lot of these things are sort of happening in real time. And so it was almost impossible to sort of gain the kind of clarity that's needed to write a book, or dare I say, even be optimistic. I mean, I think the first, the first title that we were thinking we would call this is like, This Won't End Well, right? We were so committed, but then our agent was like, I don't know that a book titled This Won't End Well is a good idea, which, thinking back, it was like, oh my God, what were we thinking? But again, that was just how sad we felt. Like all these things were happening.
Yeah.
On top of that, I think we had a real estate portfolio that we had just sold. Like it was just confusing times.
Yeah.
And so, but no, things did not go smoothly. We did not come out the gates at all. And to Kirsten's point, like just writing the proposal and getting it to a point where it was clear and presentable was an uphill battle in and of itself. So yeah, we were pretty tired.
Yeah. So 6 months of trying writing, we hired a second writing coach.
Yeah.
And that's when we started to make some traction. But of course, when one thing goes right, another thing happens. We lost our acquiring editor. There was turnover at Penguin. Like it was a lot. Like it was not smooth sailing the way that we thought it would be.
No.
Oh no. Okay. So, I have several questions from that. So you're knowing, so you have the proposal, you have the deal. So you're probably on a deadline for this first draft, but you're having the issues, feeling like there's too much going on right now to write. What was the conversation then between your agent and the publisher to say, can we get extra time? Or like this first draft isn't going to be where it is. Was there any concern that they would be like, thanks, but no thanks? Like what was some of that going on with the writing challenges? And then obviously the turnover. I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, we were nervous and we did end up turning in something, but we knew it wasn't our best work. But they were also on the publishing side having their own set of issues. So they were nervous too, because like the supply chain and all that stuff had started to back up. And so they were running behind. So it was kind of like a bit of relief when we both said like, look, I don't know that this is gonna I don't know that we're gonna hit this deadline. Which is where, again, our agent added value, where she was like, I know a couple of writing coaches that I can recommend. Our editor at the publisher also recommended a couple of writing coaches. And so we started this process again of like, who can help us take it to the finish line without trying to alter our voice, without trying to lose the spirit or the essence of the book, and is really comfortable allowing writers to flourish just within like a structured kind of point of view. But yeah, like
we swung a couple times on our own, right? Like we did not take those recommendations at all. Like, and it wasn't ego. It was, again, going back to what I was saying, it was like, I'm not a big fan of just immediately outsourcing like core components of the process, because you lose the opportunity to learn. And it's like, well, I don't, I was like, if anything else, that's going to make me want to go through it again, because I don't feel like I actually went through the ringer the first time.
Yeah.
And so it almost felt like this was supposed to be painful, right? Like, I don't want to walk in and just immediately start taking sort of pain relief. But yeah, we missed a couple times and, submitted some things that we were confident on, and it got crapped on, and then
they're always so nice.
Submitted some other things. And then I was like, let's just jump on a call. And I was like, oh, it's that bad. Yeah. So, it was.
But it's also confusing, because I think we thought the reason we turned down a lot of that stuff is I think we thought that our editor at Penguin would be like holding our hand.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't realize she had 11 other books that she's responsible for. She's all at different stages, right? So very similar to a kid, a baby book doesn't need as much hands-on attention as like a older book, and that middle phase is different. And like as you're finalizing covers and doing copy edits, like that's a very different process than like where we were, which is just trying to get a draft out.
Yeah.
So we it was to your point, a learning process to learn a little bit how the publishing industry works, and then to figure out like what kind of help we needed and to be able to articulate that, because there's a lot of different coaches out there that specialize in different things. If you need help with finding the words, that's very different than I need help. I have the words, but I need help structuring it into a book.
I'll also say this, as a writer, I found myself consistently turned off by the marketing of most coaches. It felt very pushy and sort of like a one-stop shop. I solve all problems, magic bullet kind of thing. It felt very infomercially. And so the benefit of working through an agent is that they have people, and then when you can describe your problem, or even working with the publisher, they were making very open with making recommendations. So, because in that case, it's like, they're going to recommend someone that can ensure that whatever we give them is going to be in the style and in the fashion in which they like to receive it.
Yeah.
The recommendations from my agent were probably more so tailored around, well, based on my understanding of you and what you all are trying to do and what you're trying to protect, here's what I recommend. So either one of those, I would say, would have been preferable choices versus the person who's a book coach that says, hey, that they can solve all those problems. For me, it just kind of felt like I don't want to have to, because it just didn't really seem like there was an opportunity to build a relationship there. And again, that type of transaction, we felt like, given the type of book that we wanted to write, that we would run the risk of sort of diminishing the voice a little bit.
And I think that really goes to show how every author is different and every book is different for that author, right? So, I mean, you guys, award-winning blog, amazing writing skills, clearly, but then it's coming to the book side. And I see this with several of the authors I've worked with, great blogs. They go to write the book and I'm like, you can't say that in a book because you can't click on things. Like just even like some of those basic things. And then you have people like, well, this reads like a blog. I'm like, well, some people like to read blogs, but some people aren't reading the blog because they prefer books. And I'm sure there was obviously, like you said, so many other things going on that are impacting the writing. But that's interesting to hear that, like, even for the level of skill that you clearly have, knowing when it was time to say, okay, let's bring in some help. And I hope authors are listening to that, to think like, but I've won awards, like I've had short stories, but like all those things. It's like, but you may need help. Like what got you here may not be getting you there to that next step. And I'm so glad that you guys are honest and upfront that you had that help, because it'd be easier to be like, yeah, we
did it all by myself.
Oh yeah, no, no, not at all. And again, it was also a bit of insight into the world of being a writer. I'd heard that these things and these services existed, but honestly, the guy it almost felt like I was dealing with the mafia. Like, if I'm being honest, right? He was a ghostwriter, doesn't have a website.
It's like,
just
if you know, you know.
Here's my resume, but on a piece of paper, but I'm going to take that paper back because you can't have it. Like it's like it was very
you can't
secretive.
Know that I wrote
right because
this huge book.
He was the
for
brain,
somebody else.
And the mind behind several really best-selling authors, and he was also just a deeply interesting guy, right? Like we were just really intrigued. And so again, that was just a part of the process. I was like, all right, I guess this is the world that we're in right now. Like, we're meeting with the guy. I don't even know if that's his real name. But we had the first session, which was supposed to be a bit of a brain dump that is then sort of given to him to distill and create this framework that we can then use to help sharpen up the message. Because our problem was there were so many things that we wanted to talk about. We were trying to cram it all into the book. And so it got messy. He helped us sort of take our stories, intertwine them a little bit, take the issues and sort of structure all those things. And even that first session, we couldn't get it all done. He had to come back, and then we did it again. So it was a grind. It was also expensive, right? Like, I remember thinking like, man, like we could be investing that money. But I just
there goes my advance.
There, right, there it is. I mean, it's expensive, but again, for us, it was really just the process that we really wanted to do, because it's just something about a book. To your point about like blogs and podcasts, they tap into a different part of the psyche, and they open doors that other mediums just can't open. And so we wanted to be a part of that, because we really realized that, wow, if we're able to contribute the message that we want to contribute to the world that we are sort of trying to introduce this concept to, like, I can sleep well at night knowing that I've sort of done my part, and I did it the right way. And I didn't, we didn't shortchange the process. We did it with respect and integrity. Like, I feel that way about what we did. And that was important to us even throughout the process.
Yeah. Awesome. I think the proof is in the pudding, right? The proof is in the amazing book. The proof is in the review. The proof came out, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I'm so excited for you guys that like it all came together too, because I know you two are some of the hardest working people out there. And so to see the hard work actually result in a positive thing, because like I've heard this quote before, like the hard work is guaranteed, the result isn't. And like hard work and you had the result. So I think that's amazing. You write eventually, you get through the 16 drafts you mentioned, maybe more. The book is ready to go. It's beautiful. It goes off to the magical room where the elves make it a book at the publisher. And so at this point, what was there's conversations with the editor and yourselves, or with the agent and yourselves? Okay, now you guys really need to ramp up the marketing. Were they coaching you on things to do for the marketing, or were you all like, we got it, we're good? Like, how was that? How did that work? Because when I look at what you guys are posting of, I remember the pages on the window And you had the post of like, the red marker on it. And obviously you did all the posts of like when you did the photo shoot for the cover and things like that. And it was so well combined with your regular post that you were putting out just for the content. It was seamless. So in my mind, I'm like, did they have a calendar to say every X many posts do this? Or do you just naturally know? And so I just, tell me the genius behind the book marketing, because it worked. It was perfect.
Thank you. So the first part I would say is no, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but like our agent and our publisher were largely like not involved at all.
They gave us a little one pager.
They kind of trusted that
it was like offer incentives for people that send receipts, and it was like, okay.
Yeah. They gave us examples. It was like, if you guys do what this person did, you'll be fine. And I was like, but I don't like what that person did. I didn't like a lot of the stuff that they did, that people recommended. I just didn't like it. And again, I knew that if we didn't like it, I would say. And so I knew that if we went that route, the moment you sort of introduce something that you don't like about the book, like you're not going to want to do it. Right. Like if you force me to say something or to do something or something to look a certain way, it's going to detract from me wanting to promote the book. So we knew that promoting the book was going to be a long process. And so it was like, all right, we have to enjoy the process. If we're going to buy into it, then we have to do things that we also enjoy doing. And so that was the creative challenge. It was like, how do we withstand what we're being told is the next grind? Because we were told writing the book is a grind, promoting the book is a grind. And so the combination of just our own professional experience, our backgrounds were in marketing and business development and sales. We sort of had a bit of an example of building a brand. And at that point, we'd built multiple brands. And so Cashing Out, the title of our book, we realized was a brand. And so we started thinking about it. How do we sort of create something in the process? And so a lot of the things that we did prior to launch was really just classic, at least to me, it was just like classic drip feeding, right? It was like reminding people, because depending on where they may have met us or found us, they may not even know that we were writing a book, right? If you'd found us 6 months in January of 2022, you may not have even known that we wrote a book, right? We announced when we signed the deal in 2020 or something like that. So it's 2 years in between. Like we didn't really spend that much time talking about it. And so we really just started drip feeding things in there. And then the last part was again, going back to that original sort of observation, which was that we have a message that we know people are uncomfortable talking about. And we know that there's a lot of content out there that exists that doesn't resonate with the people that we're talking to. And so the challenge became, how do we sort of capture some of the learnings that we already had? How do we make people who don't normally read books or think about money want to actually do both of those things? And the problem, and so the answer is not, to our earlier point, to do what other authors have done. It was to reach them in ways that you wouldn't normally
regular products
reach them, right?
Reach them how Nike reaches them.
Correct.
Reach them how Target reaches them, just through engaging, fun, loud musical content. Like that was our plan. And so everything from the mixtape to the excerpt series, where it's like, let's give them a little Costco style sample of what they like. Even our podcast, like we were reading excerpts and we were talking about other people's reactions. We sent several books to people in the space who I knew had audiences who trusted them, like who wouldn't just say, oh, this was a good book just because we sent it to them for free. It's like, no, I know how you run your platform. I know the integrity in which you handle your own brand. And so like having their word meant more than we sent the book to several people with massive platforms, celebrities and non-celebrities. And those people haven't really said anything. Like a lot of the promotion, the user generated content has come from small and medium sized creators who have audiences who trust them, which was, again, counterintuitive to what the publisher wanted us to do. They wanted us to send it to, Damon John at Shark Tank and another celebrity. And it's like, yeah, cool. But like they get stuff all the time. And I'm sure it's better than a book.
Well, Damon, if you're watching,
the
few thousand people subscribe. If you're watching, Damon, you can get a free copy.
I know.
I mean, and we know not long after Cashing Out released, that Beyonce released, her song, she quit her 9 to 5. I mean, that Serena announced that she was going to retire. So, I mean, maybe they did get a copy.
Maybe
I remember when you posted that, I was like, this is perfect.
No, even better, literally on the day of launch.
Yeah, it was a couple days before.
Pharrell and
21 Savage
and
rappers, Tyler, their creator,
launched a song called Cash In, Cash Out.
Oh my God, it was so perfect.
I mean, it was just like the stars aligning, and it was like, oh my God, like between the birth of this new term, like the Great Resignation, our book coming out, literal like musicians, famous musicians creating songs using our language in the title. And then Beyonce writing a song sort of inspired by the same feelings. It kind of felt like, all right, I don't know that I can ask for much more. So like that luck, that's not strategy. That's called luck. The Great Resignation part, I would say, actually, no, we were early and we knew what we were doing. We saw that coming.
But even Serena said retirement in her letter, greatest of all time, said, I don't like using the word retirement. It's an outdated term. And like all I needed her to say was, I'm cashing out instead. And then I'd be like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. but like, I do feel like some of those things, like our ability to notice those things are happening, going back to what Julien said, living outside of the bubble or the niche that you're in, to be able to connect your product, your book to something larger that's happening is a skill that more writers need to do. Because to your point, you see people who have great content, great writing, great books. And it's like, man, if I were them, I would post this article about this related / unrelated thing and link your book to say, this is exactly what I was talking about in chapter 7. This is exactly what I meant when I said yada, yada, yada. Just reminding writers to come away from the keyboard, step away from the keyboard for a minute, scroll through pop culture and find a bridge.
Find the point of reference.
It helps the marketing, like it helps you with the marketing because the algorithm's already paying attention to this popular culture stuff. As much as we may call it silly, that's the world that we live in. So as many anchors as you can attach to that stuff to bring it back to your work, it just helps the boosting of your product.
Absolutely. That was perfect. And I feel like it's one of those things like, I know I should be doing that more. I know I live and breathe this stuff every day and I know I should be doing that more and I still don't make the time to do it, and it's like, it's the hardest part to be like, but I made the thing and it's awesome. Can't you just, and like, so then, like you said, it's that second grind. I compare it to like the first half of the marathon is writing the book. The second half of the marathon is like marketing it. And like, you're perpetually at like the 26-mile mark. That 0.2 never comes. You're never done. So that was perfect. That was amazing. And to know, again, like you said, it was luck, but I would also say like you made your own luck. Like you were paying attention to these things. Like you knew it was coming. You had a great product. And if the magical elves somewhere, like, hey, do this. We don't know.
I'll also add this though, because I don't want to make it seem as if our agent and the publisher weren't helpful, right? So like we were responsible for the marketing, what we would consider self-generated marketing, but we also knew that, and we believed that was actually going to be the driver. So we knew that they were going to do their part to get big press and to do things like, interviews and outreach to podcasts and that sort of thing. They were sort of taking aim with those things, which was an amazing experience, right? Because we go through this period, you submit the manuscript, you get it approved, and then there's like this period of silence. And then you get introduced to, here's your marketing team. It's time to start selling. And it was we had to be like woken up a little bit, right? And it was like a team of people, publicists and marketers, and it just a bunch of like Avengers, sort of saying, here's what we're going to do. I want to know what you're going to do, not from a standpoint of sort of thinking about it so that they can say yay or nay, but just so that they knew how things fit into the broader puzzle. And they sort of helped us think about like timing, because that was important to them based on their experience, because we would have done it a bit differently, but they're like, no, it's important to really, you want to make as big as a splash as possible. So if all of these things sort of combine, then you get to own the moment. And that, in their experience, was far more of a successful tactic. And so they were like, I wouldn't even say helpful, like they were the reasons why we were able to secure like big media press and big, They were, but like we wrote a message that those companies and organizations felt like, yeah, I want to tell that story. Mm-hmm. Yes, mm-hmm. That's intriguing. And so like kudos to us for writing the book and sort of that part. But they were the ones that coordinated all of the other things that people saw in terms of television and press and outreach.
Yeah, that was huge because GMA, book launch day,
which is a dream come true. And again, at this point, it sounds like, all right, screw these guys. I get it. Trust me. I remember when I mean, even Penguin was excited, right? It doesn't like that part for me was weird. I was like, oh, should we be excited? They're super excited, but like, are they just trying to make sure that we're excited? But like, yeah, to be on GMA, to have your book launched, on GMA, and to see it on a jumbotron on Times Square, even if it's just for a couple of seconds, is a literal dream come true. And it actually still hasn't quite set in yet because we just finished, the book tour. But yeah, you can't ask for more than that. And so again, like if you're talking about, independent, if we're going the independent route, it's probably not going to happen. You know what I mean? On like, you gotta, I can't even imagine how much money you would have to spend to earn that sort of media opportunity, right? Like those are the kinds of things like that you get through traditional publishing, assuming you're working with a reputable publisher and a reputable or notable imprint. And we knew that, like that was why we were very eager about wanting to work with Portfolio, because we knew where we wanted to be. We wanted to be considered thought leaders, and they lived in that imprint. And so we wanted to be a part of that family, and everything else that happened is sort of because of our understanding or sort of their role in the broader media landscape.
Yeah, that none of this happened by accident, right?
No.
It was like, well, we were working hard and we had great content, and then suddenly the algorithms made us go viral and all this stuff. Like that's not how it happens. It's the hard work every day, day in and day out. And yes, aligning with the people to get you there. I've talked with several authors and they say, well, the dream is the New York Times bestseller list. I'm like, you got to go traditional. Like there's really not a path that I would know that would get you there. Otherwise everybody would be on it, right?
Even the traditional path, there are plenty of people who sell the required amount of books, and you still got to be subject to the editorial choice and the fact that 8 of 10 of those books have been on there for 176 weeks. Like it's hundreds of y'all vying for 2 slots, 3 slots. So it's very, very difficult. And that's been an adjustment when we started the marketing, was like defining the metrics that matter to us.
Yep.
It wasn't about likes, shares, retweets. It was about like, did somebody send you a personal note?
Yeah.
Does somebody bring up that post when we're in person? Did you get an email? Did somebody who you really, really respect say, I pre-ordered mine? Like, it was those things that kept us going, because it can be very discouraging to work hard on a post or a video, or you're trying to sell, but that thing only gets like 3 likes.
Right.
But you have to keep the bigger picture in mind, that like those aren't the metrics that ultimately matter. They matter, but they don't define you.
Yeah, they're vanity metrics, and we're mindful of that even in our business, right? So. Yeah. It means more to me to get a well-written email from a reader or a really long DM than it does 1,000 likes from people who just I have a casual relationship with, right? Yeah. So for us, even our decision to respond to DMs, like despite our audience size, to actually respond to that email, like people know that, they feel like they know us. And so it's like years and years of engaging with people to get to the point where when we post, they respond, they react, they are just as vulnerable. They have a deeper sort of relationship there. And that was important to us. Because again, like if based on who we are and sort of what we're building and how we want to live our lives, like we didn't walk away from our jobs to create a life that we wanted to walk away from.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if I'm going to be here, I want to be clear on where my boundaries are, but I want to like enjoy the process. If I don't enjoy the process, then well, why did I leave? I made all this hoopla about leaving this one way of life to now create a sort of image of myself or a lifestyle that I don't really enjoy, that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And so we were really mindful of that. And again, all of those things are sort of incorporated into the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And that the idea that, the thing that connects you to your audience the most is a thing you can't scale, right? Like you can't outsource your your genuine response to somebody. But those are the things, like you said, like that make it worth it, and that build the connection. And that connection, you can't build it overnight. Like that happens over time and building that trust. And that's something I think so many authors, they want the end outcome. But like you said, this was years in the making just for the book. But like even before that, it was years of building the brand and building that trust and building those relationships really with your audience. And it never happens overnight. There's no overnight.
It could. And we've learned, right, that for some people, they pay to make it appear as if it's overnight. We learned that process.
And for some people, it genuinely is overnight. They created a piece of content that went viral and it changed their lives, right? Mm-hmm. But to your point about like the 1%, this is the 0.01%. Like those people, the overnight people are the 1% of the 1%. Like it's very, very rare. You would think it happens every day because of how the algorithm lines up your content. But like, no, it's the same people. It's the same 12 people that went viral, like continuing to go viral because that's what the algorithm does.
Yeah. That's very good for authors to hear that. Like this is got to put in that work. Okay. I wanted to talk about the book tour that you put together. So this was all you guys, or did you have assistants in putting that together? Or this was all
we had a part-time assistant for like half. Like she was part-time and only could really help for half of it, but that was pretty much all us, and quite honestly her girl gang. She's got a couple of friends that were mindful to sort of be there, a family, and it was a lot of heavy lifting, and we took some cues really from authors that we know that we thought had done it really well, and they all sort of grinded through it too, where it's like, this is my sister. She's not my assistant, she's my sister, and we took a very similar approach. But it was a lot of work. We did a 6-city book tour, including our home city. And in some cities, in addition to the book signing and event, we did unique dinner experiences with the readers. And then on top of that, we really wanted to add a community service component to the book tour. And so a portion of the proceeds in every tour stop went towards fighting food insecurity. And so we would make donations to local organizations in every city that we visited, which just, again, it matters to us to feel good throughout the process, right? Because like if I don't feel good about it, I'm not going to want to talk about it. I'm not going to want to do it again. I don't mind doing it because I know at the end of the day, like we're reaching people, we're touching people, but we're also sort of leaving these cities in a little better condition than the state in which we found it. And so that was sort of the spirit of it, and it tied into the message in the book. And it was 8 weeks end to end, 6 cities, maybe 10 events, maybe more than that, because there were some speaking engagements interwoven to some of the tour stops.
Yeah, it was so fun to see you posting on all these different cities and all the different events too. I was feeling the FOMO. But it looked like it was fun. It looked like, and some of them looked like they were these very close, like intimate conversations, conversations, so that like people probably felt like they got to know you versus if it was in front of a huge seminar lecture hall where they're like, oh, I think that's them up there. Like it looked like it was all very close, and I'm sure that built so many connections where now those people in the audience are going to go tell everybody they know, gotta go check out the book.
Well, they also met their people, right? Like that was the other, again, metrics that mattered to us, where it's like, if we are having these tour stops in different cities, everybody needs to know, like, these are your neighbors. Like you're not the only person who is concerned about financial state of your family in a 30-mile radius. Like y'all should continue to meet, have lunch, have dinner. Like, let me show you how it's done. Let's go to dinner tonight. And I'll show you that like, it's not going to be scary. You don't need me to facilitate this friendship. Like you build it. Right. And we'll show you, we'll hold your hand and we'll show you how to do it. But then like, that's how the book kind of lives on. Like it's original OG guerrilla marketing, where like you have these friend groups and it's like, how'd you meet? Well, we met at a book tour. Which book? And then it's like, okay, well, that just continues. Like it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was such a privilege to be in the room and to watch those things. That to me was the best part. Because we can talk about making the donations and leaving, let's say, a city in a little better state. But I think that's even a better example of leaving the city in a better state, because like who knows what may come out of some of these new relationships. I'm sure there's certain people, we had people meeting, and exchanging business cards because there were job openings, and just like all these kinds of things were kind of happening in real time. And it was really just a privilege to be a part of it. So I would say for any author, like meeting the people is a huge thing. It's not something I would take lightly.
Awesome. Well done. It was from somebody observing from social media, it looked flawless, the execution. I know there were like a few hiccups on the way.
Yeah.
Just obviously with travel right now and things like that. But you guys made it look easy. And that's of course social media, make it look easy, but you made it look easy. You made it look effortless, even though, like you said, it was years of hard work to get it done, and beautiful end result. And all the success that you've had, like I could not have wished that upon more amazing people like you.
Thank you.
You guys are doing the thing. So I always wrap up with 2 final questions for the interviews I've done. So one is, where can people find you? Where can they find the book? Shout it out.
Yeah, you can get Cashing Out anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, indie bookstores. We also have audiobooks for the listeners out there. You can get those on Audible or Apple Books. And then you can find us at richandregular.com. We're on all the social media handles at Rich and Regular: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Perfect. And then the final question is, what is your greatest ambition?
Ooh.
Just to be a positive role model to my son, honestly.
Aww.
That's about it. Typical dad answer, but that's really all I want at this point.
Mine is to always feel like I have a choice, to never feel boxed into doing anything. It's all a choice.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well, it was so great to talk with you guys. I could probably just chat and talk shop for like so much longer. Not just about like the book, but also like just pie stuff and like
family stuff. But,
but she's probably gonna get up in 15 minutes. I guess I should like eat, like get her lunch. I don't know.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for taking the time to have this discussion. I'm super excited for authors to watch this and really learn from your experience. And hopefully if they even take just one nugget from this, they're going to be that much better. One piece of information from this, like they're going to feel that much more on their path and confident. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's always good to talk to you.
All right. Well, what did you guys think about hearing Julien and Kiersten's story about how they were able to get this publishing deal, what it was like to go through all the different steps of securing the agent, working with a book coach, getting the book out and marketing it? I think one of the things I really liked hearing that Julien and Kiersten mentioned over and over again was their intentionality. None of this was a mistake. None of this was a fluke that just got picked up by the algorithms and went viral. None of, what they put together was just, something that they threw up and see if it works. Like there was thought into their audience, there was thought into their messaging, with the aim of having this book come out one day, and that it did work. But at the end of the day, they were happy with the content that they put out and the authenticity of it. And I think that's something that authors, we sometimes lose sight of when we see other people getting these big, shiny, metrics, right? Or they get big, shiny accolades and we think, well, we just want that. But realizing, backing into that, it is that connection with your audience. It's putting in the hard work to be intentional about what you're saying, who you're saying it to, how your audience is finding content and how you can get in front of them. And that sometimes is the hardest part for us authors, because we're like, we made this beautiful thing. But I think seeing Julien and Kiersten's experience and seeing the success that they've had, it all stems back from really knowing their audience, who they're writing for, who they're talking to, and where they're showing up. And that's something that just takes time. It's not something you're going to figure out overnight. And like they said, the overnight sensations, they are out there, but they're the 0.01%. Don't bank on that. Put in the work, put in the effort. And as long as you're happy with the end product and you know the success metrics that make you happy, then that's your success. All the other stuff is just the shiny glitter. So I want to give a huge thank you again, Julien and Kiersten, for spending that time to go over the book process and all the ins and outs. We really could have talked for another 2 hours, just like inside baseball about publishing and all the things that were going on. So if you have not already checked out Cashing Out, definitely go check it out at your local bookstore, check it out at the library. You can get it, like I said, all formats, all places. And if you have more questions, definitely post them below. All right, if you found this interview helpful and enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe. That tells YouTube that you got value from this information and can get it in front of other authors like us. Now you can get back to writing your book.